do lenders have different requirements?
They are similar.
Yeah.
Sometimes they just ask for a little bit more. So
Oh, okay.
there's a
That's
base,
good to know.
there's a baseline, and then there's, I want to add this much to it.
Uh-huh.
Because what they're doing is selling the loan to a mortgage-backed security. They're selling it on the private market.
That's true. They're creating a
And
product,
so
a
they're
mortgage.
trying to show that we did a good loan
We did a
here.
good loan, yeah.
Here's the appraisal. The appraisal was done to these standards. The underwriter reviewed it, made
Yeah.
sure it check marked everything that, on the
Okay.
requirements, so that they can sell the loan.
That's a really good point, because we tend to just look at things and maybe the value from our own perspective and not from, okay, what's gonna happen with this loan or the asset of the loan, and what people are gonna be looking at, so that's important as
Yeah.
well. But it's not something we really have a lot of control over when we, it's, when we use a lender, we think, we don't realize that sometimes they do have different.
They do, and all of those requirements under the new laws from 2008, from the financial, the meltdown we had in real estate, what was happening back then as far as
please explain.
appraisals they're all coming in, and there was pressure from the loan officer, if you don't get it, if you start having too many appraisals that don't make value, they're not going to send you the order,
the business anymore.
And so there was a lot of things that happened, and all the way up the line that caused that meltdown from appraising all the way up to the Wall Street doing what they did.
Yeah. On the so what's the difference now when an appraiser from, let's say, 2008 to the early 2000s to today? What has changed? Let's say legally, what you can do and can't, or the structure of how a lender hires appraisers, things like that.
That's exactly, they affected that as far as they wanted to make it where there's no influence. Okay. A lot of times real estate agents but have this false idea that they're not supposed to talk to the appraiser about anything. What they're not supposed to talk about is really what the value is, because we can't talk about it because we're not done with the appraisal. We don't know, so we can't really speak to the value unless we've done or have all the data to make that determination. However, what was your question? I'm sorry. Where was I going with this?
I was saying the difference. What changed? Yeah.
Okay, the difference is they added what's called an appraisal management company to be that in between you and the lender. So they're the ones that receive the order, distribute it to their list of appraisers that are approved on their list, and then when the appraiser sends it back, they review it before it goes to the lender. If there is a request of a reconsideration of value sent, it will go through the appraisal management company to the appraiser, not from the lender.
So there's no direct, they can't say, I want Rigo to come do an appraisal.
No, they can't do that.
They can't do that anymore.
I know I get loans from Loan Depot or whatever, and they've got to deal with the builder, and we're on the rotation of appraisers. So you can have a rotation of appraisers that you've chosen to be on your appraisal panel. That way you can, most of them you've worked with before, and you might even be able to say, as an appraisal man, or the person deciding who you want to do the appraisal out of this group of people. But if you start using one person too much, or different things like that, so they just want us to be independent and as much as possible.
Yes.
And then there's a bunch of rules that came out.
That changed.
Right. Lenders started actually doing. See, a lender that just wants a value to come in, and they're not doing any favors to their company by doing that. So now that this is the case, we feel a little bit less pressured. The values don't have to come in. If they don't come in, oh well. As long as it's not like we're not making mistakes on that, as far as they're showing us that we're wrong. Why didn't you use this comp, and giving us real information.
So when you were directly hired before, you were under more pressure to meet the expectations, let's say, of a lender. And I guess what we need to explain too is this is how a lot of bad loans got made to people who could not afford the loans, and they were and the properties were overvalued. And so when the prices started to go down, all of a sudden people had more in their loan than their house was worth. And that's where we saw foreclosures and short
it's
sales.
going to happen. I mean,
Yeah.
but if you've inflated the value in the first place, it's just going to make it worse.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, and we respect the fact that two people decided, a buyer and a seller decided to
agree on a price. Mhm.
But in the case like an FHA buyer competing with a bunch of conventional buyers,
Yeah.
you know, we have to
It's
keep,
tough.
you know, so we
Yeah.
know that that's happening. So if it sells for over list price, that doesn't mean it's not going to make value.
Uh-huh.
It just means, you know,
The
we have-
chance, the risk.
there's a risk that it will, but it doesn't mean that. I mean, it might be the case.
Okay.
Right now, we're going through tremendous market activity. Market values are going up.
Yes.
And so along with location, quality, condition, size of the home, there's one other little factor that can be thought of, or you know, if appraisal comes back and there's no what's called a time adjustment. Okay, so a time adjustment is,
Interesting.
let's say appraisal, the comparable sold 3 months ago or 6 months ago,
Yes.
and we're in a market that actually
Like now.
values are going up,
Yeah,
multiple
every month.
offers.
Mhm.
We're seeing in the listings multiple
Mhm.
offers. We're hearing from the real estate agents multiple offers, so we know
Right.
the market is moving. Okay,
Right.
we're getting a bunch of orders. Everybody's talking, so
Yeah.
we see it.
So you take that into consideration too?
There's a time when all of a sudden we do start doing that. Meaning me and my peers.
Okay.
We don't all get together and say, well, you know, we just eventually, we have no choice. The values that we're coming up with historical data without time adjustments is not making the value,
Mhm.
but we're hearing that this market is active, there's multiple offers,
Right.
so we have to consider that. So what we do is we go in and we run statistics or whatever on
On the
what
month.
is it, what is the market moving per month, and then
You showed me that once, I remember
and
doing that.
that adjustment will go there. It might be moving down, and
Yeah.
there's very
Yeah.
rare times when we don't want to do market time adjustments.
Yeah.
As appraisers.
Sure.
So when we start doing them, I mean, that means that it's been going on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, but it
Yeah.
might be going down also. So, I mean, I remember that the time when everything was making value because the market was going down and the comparables that sold were historical, and so you know what I'm saying.
And they
So-
were higher.
Yeah,
Right.
so you start
in the
seeing
market.
that, and there
Yes,
actually
yes.
should probably be a time adjustment for the
Adjustment,
negative.
just to the negative. Oh my
So
gosh.
we we determine what it is per month and we apply it.
Okay.
So then that's how we kind of keep up with appreciation and depreciation.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's an important issue right now.
Yeah. So
Appreciation. Is there anything else you can think of that you might want to share? That would
I'm
be
sure.
important for the consumer, buyers, sellers, agents, us agents.
Oh yeah, as agents, you know, another thing, as a listing agent, before the appraisal is actually done, a lot of agents are providing what's an appraisal package. They call it appraisal package, and in which they provide things like the contract, comparables that they think are comparables, or different information about the comparables. They might say this was a divorce and they sold it cheap, or has a bad late floor plan. We know we're gonna have to go outside the subdivision for comparables, that subdivision over here sells for less, and there's ways to determine that.
Okay.
As a real estate agent, you can do like, you know, what's selling, what are the average over here, what's
Yes.
the average over
Yeah.
here, and
Right.
if there's a difference.
Right.
So you can see that, or if you just know that, because you're on the ground, as a real estate
Right.
agent, you're on the ground, you know more than we do. I
Yeah.
cover a lot of area. I
Yeah.
don't live in those areas. I'm a real estate agent. I might not have sold in those areas, but I've done a bunch of appraisals in those areas. I've never done an appraisal in that area. It doesn't matter because I'm using, you know, HAR, and I'm using what I've been taught, and I can go into an area. So, but I might not know something that's important. Now,
Okay.
I've had a real estate agent tell me schools, and I'll be like, that's fine. I mean, most of the comparables are going to come from this neighborhood, so those
It's
are going
not-
to have the
that's-
same schools.
They're gonna have the same schools,
But
yeah.
if this area over here, and you know because of the school, people were actually trying to get in over here.
Yes.
The high school for Clemens, they're trying to get over here versus the high school for another school.
Right.
And you know that that's something you might say, well, because of the schools, these comps over here or these sales over here, in case I do have to go over here, are selling
You
for
would have
less
to make
because
you would make an adjustment then?
for location.
Okay.
So
Or is that something maybe that we can point out
you can point it out.
to the appraiser?
We can't see everything sometimes.
Yeah, I see.
You wanna
I
be
see.
able
Well,
to
that's really helpful
show
to know
things.
that. So things that we could point out would be like schools.
Not necessarily schools, but like if you know
Or values in the
you know
area.
the comparable or a cell over here is possibly going to be used in the appraisal.
Yes.
If you do happen to go over here in this area or in this neighborhood,
Okay.
or use these comps, they're zoned to a school, and there's more demand over here for this school. And
Okay.
here's some data that show that homes are selling for more over here than over here. That's actually if you see that we've used an appraisal. Usually, you might not know to go outside the because you don't know that I'm going to have to go outside the subdivision to find a comparable because there's not a lot of these size homes in this neighborhood. But location is more important. So if there's a little bit bigger size home, but it's in the same neighborhood and the same everything else, we're probably going to want to have that one in the report. We might go outside the subdivision to bracket something. Like you have a very large lot, but there's no other lots in your subdivision. But over here, there's a large lot that brackets the size, and that's because the underwriter's requiring us to have something in the report with that. We might not put a lot of value on it.
Right.
We might not say this.
Things that we as realtors
this
would
doesn't
think
matter.
of,
This comparable's here, but it's not going to. It doesn't have a lot of effect on value because it's outside the neighborhood. These do. These are the comparables that do. We'll say that in the report.
Yes. Yeah. And that is one thing I do explain to sellers when I go and do a listing. Help them choose a listing price. I mean, the seller has to decide, what it is. I got to give them all the facts, but also my knowledge in understanding that what will happen if they list it above price, even if somebody offers that if they're coming in with a loan, that there's going to be other hurdles, and one of those hurdles is the appraisal.
Yeah, there's
that has to be considered.
Yeah, there's been times when I've heard real estate agents say, I'm not going to take that one because I know it's not going to appraise. I wouldn't do that in this market.
You mean a listing? They wouldn't take a listing?
They wouldn't
take
accept an offer.
Oh, accept an offer. Okay.
Way out,
Okay, yeah,
because that's a technique. They'll make a high offer and then it won't appraise.
Right, and then they want to.
They're going to come back.
The buyer wants to
come
back less.
And also the difference between FHA and conventional is an FHA appraisal sticks with the property for 6 months.
Okay.
So once you get that FHA appraisal on that property, it's there for 6 months. Versus conventional, you go somewhere else to do a loan.
And they're not going to look at that other one.
Another appraisal, another opinion.
Okay.
When
you say it sticks, it means it's recorded somewhere where all the FHA appraisers or everybody who's appraising that property has to look at.
For that property, no, we don't look at it, but for that property address, an appraisal is assigned.
Okay.
And they'll know.
Okay.
So.
And that's with FHA. Okay, so, but it's different with conventional.
Right.
You're saying. Well, that is really good news. I mean, it's good information to understand because it does affect, in different markets, what kind of offers people want to make and what kind of offers sellers want to accept. Well, thank you so much for your time. Oh my gosh, we've got so much information here. So Rigo, thanks again.
Thank you.